Can everybody hear me all right? Is my mic on? It's good? No?
Try again.
Okay, how's that? Is that working? Yes, excellent. All right, yes, and this is really tragic. It is now 30 years experience. That is miserable, right? Isn't it? Oh my God. And everything's changed so much in the last 3 years as well. All right, so a little disclaimer before I get going. So if any of you saw Mel's talk earlier this morning, she's probably talked about a lot of the same stuff that I'm going to talk about. So hosted agents, how to use them, how to write them, et cetera, et cetera. So that's your kind of opportunity. Don't come up to me at the end and say, oh, I saw that already from Mel. She did a better job. She probably will. That's all good. I watched the Socceroos game, disclaimer. So that's where I was, go Australia. All right, so what we're going to talk about today is hosted agents and Toolbox inside of Microsoft Foundry. So we're going to talk about like why it's there, why you might want to use it, the kind of problems that you can solve with it, but also some of the challenges as well, and some ways that you can put your, let's say, agents on a diet. So it's mainly going to be demos. Maybe there'll be time for questions at the end, but probably not because we're already 5 minutes in. So come and find me afterwards if you've got any questions. So are we on the right side? Yes, we are. So it's really weird, right? If you go back 3 years and you were building an API, who in here built APIs 3 years ago? Like, yeah, there's a few hands in there, right? Everything was different. I remember having conversations about how lean can you go? How many concurrent requests per second can we get on this tiny, tiny little VM that's running in the cloud? Everything was stateless. We knew the code that was executing. It was a dream looking back on it, right? Everything was just so, so, so easy. And the thing is, we're at this point now in the evolution, let's say, of agents, where that paradigm may still work for you, but it might not, right? So that's another disclaimer to this talk. The thing we're going to look at, hosted agents, I would not say is a panacea for all agents, right? I think it's super important to understand that you don't always need what we're going to talk about. Let's say you've got an agent and it wants to make a stateless API call to get a bit of knowledge. It wants to execute a few tools. And it's not going to try and write to disk or execute code on the fly, then to be honest with you, there are probably simpler ways to run that agent than running it in a hosted agent. Like use a prompt agent inside Foundry, right? Carry on running it on Bedrock, run it in Azure Container Apps, doesn't really matter. That kind of agent, happy days, very easy. You can reason with them. All right, LLMs are indeterministic to a point, but you can still pretty much reason with that. It's not going to go rogue on your VM. It's not going to start writing to file systems. It's not going to start reading what other invocations to that agent are doing. Perfectly good. But I think what we're seeing, and interested, like if you're all seeing this as well, is a move towards maybe more complicated types of agent harness, where the agents that you're writing are becoming less deterministic in that way. So what I mean by that is it's not uncommon now to have agents that maybe want to write to file storage. So if you've ever used the GitHub Copilot SDK, you'll see it likes to do that, and we'll have a look at it in a minute. It's an amazing agent harness, but it kind of wants to own some space on the disk and write its innermost thoughts there and be able to read them later on. You might have agents as well that, let's say, again, let's think about an agent that wants to write some code on the fly and execute it. Okay, so you might have an agent where it's like, write me a small Python script that can go and introspect this Excel file. It can tot up all of the numbers in that column, and it can just feed the number back in. So now you're in this mode of dynamic code execution. Now there are solutions to this already. You can have the agent write code, upload all the files to a dynamic container, upload the code, execute it on the fly, etc. There's a lot of moving parts, right? So what if you could do that all on a VM that was yours? Nobody else is going to touch it. No other conversations are going to touch it. Your session has literally got affinity to that. So that's the kind of agent that we're looking at, right? We're looking at these slightly more complicated agents that are going a little bit different in what they're doing. Something else you might see is a lot of agents that you'll write today will listen on a specific protocol. So that might be the responses protocol, right? It's pretty ubiquitous. Most clients know how to call that. But if you want to leverage some kind of agent platform, what if you want your agent to be woken up when a Jira issue changes status, right? So you're not in a native responses world at this point in time. You've probably got a webhook coming from Jira or GitHub Copilot, and we don't want to have to build things that sit in front of your agents to be able to get those calls, to turn it into a responses API, just to go and send them off to an agent. It would be much better if we could just call that agent on whatever kind of payload we want and have it spin into action and do something. So that's another place that we'll have a look at where micro VMs kind of really start to give you options in how you're building those agents. And then what else do we have on here? Scale to zero, right? So I want these VMs, but I don't want to pay for them if no one's running a conversation on those VMs. So how about if we can have this platform where when a session comes in or a conversation comes in, we create a virtual machine on the fly with all of these isolation boundaries. We give you a file system, which is yours for your session and your session only. We let you do your execution, like I'll create some code, I'll execute some code, I'll call an LLM, happy days. But then if you don't do anything for a little while, and it's actually 15 minutes on Foundry hosted agents, we'll just deallocate that VM. So if no one's talking to your agent, you don't have to pay anything. So this is the kind of paradigm that we're moving into now. Like I say, it's not going to fit all agents, but if you're in that kind of situation where you want your agent to have isolation, et cetera, a persistent file system for long-running conversations, the ability to react to protocols that aren't the kind of normal, then this could be a really good solution for you. So how does it work? Again, like Mel probably showed you this earlier, but just a really quick summary of it. What's going on is you start with your code. So this is all pro code, right? So I'm a .NET developer. I've actually got some Python examples as well, but I am not a Python developer. So you're all welcome to laugh at my code when you see it. I don't mind. It's OK. But you start with your code. That can be, OK, being realistic, we currently on Hosted Agents support a few different agent frameworks in either .NET or in Python. So I'm hoping that we're going to get TypeScript support coming soon. But ultimately, you can pretty much pick an agent harness that you want, and we can expose it in hosted agents because it's just containers or binaries under the hood. We actually just released the ability to ship binaries to these things as well, which is pretty handy. So basically, you throw as your code via container or binaries, and then when a request comes in, we're going to spin up this VM on the side, we're going to bootstrap your code, we're going to give it some environment variables, and we're going to let it go and do its thing. And then what we're going to do also is provide you a few different endpoints. So we'll give you a responses endpoint if you want it. We'll give you an A to A endpoint out of the box. We can give you, I think WebRTC is coming soon as well, which is kind of cool if you want to start having voice agents as well. So again, it's about taking all of that plumbing that you'd have to write otherwise and just doing it for you on the outside. So this is what the agent platforms, and I'm showing you Foundry, right? But being honest, I don't work for AWS, but I'm sure Bedrock is probably going in the same direction as well. What I would say is if you're thinking about building an agent platform on whatever cloud you're on, I would stop now and have a look because they're becoming commodity and they're getting really, really, really good. And of course, we give you all the things that you would expect from any kind of good platform, right? We're going to give you, we already talked about the VM isolation. We're going to give you your persistent file system. We give you an agent identity, which means that when you're tracking what your agent is doing, you can bring it back to a specific agent that can look and act like a real user. And then that just gives you way more control over what that agent can do. And of course, we're going to give you observability, A365 telemetry, all that kind of stuff, because we need those as like a table stakes entry into building agents nowadays. All right, so that's enough of PowerPoint for now. I want to show you what these things look like and how we can use them. So we're going to start off in my little first demo, which is a little bit of Python code, and see if I can remember my Python to get me in the right place. So here we go. Everything's based off this, oh, that's not working, is it? Okay, let me stop sharing that one from PowerPoint. End show. Okay, that looked better. I felt things move behind. Perfect. So we've got these little packages called Agent Framework Foundry Hosting. That's what you need to bootstrap any agent that you want inside Python. And then the code itself becomes super straightforward. So I've tried to keep this one as simple as possible. We're just going to take an LLM chat client. We're going to wrap a very simple agent around it. Hopefully you can see all of this. And then we use these 2 lines of code. Oops, can't see that one there. There you go. A responses host server, and we run it. And that is your kind of like low barrier entry into getting these things running. And then we provide a little CLI tool that's going to let you deploy it. So you can just write the words AZD. I don't know if anyone remembers AZD from deploying like APIs to Azure from years ago. The CLI lets you do all this really easily, and it gives you a nice little way that you can just try and interact with your agents. So in my case, I've already deployed that agent into Foundry. So if you're not familiar with Foundry, this is it. It's like a little web portal over our backend agent platform. And this one is just my first simple, I think, agent framework basic responses. So it's a hosted agent. There's a little playground up here. You can see log streams because it's like pro code as opposed to a declarative agent. And we can interact with it using APIs. So in my case, down in the CLI tool, this is going to be a simple hello world. Now you'll see that we start talking about sessions being spun up, and we're going to have a look at that in a second as well, and conversations. So if you're ever writing an agent, like you will need to store that conversation somewhere. So again, these agent platforms nowadays, they all give you the ability to store conversations behind the scenes so that you don't have to. And then you'll see, hopefully, there you go, agent, how can I help? Like happy days. We can go into Foundry. We can go to this little traces section. And what you'll see is down here, these are the VMs that are running at the moment. So in my case, this will be the one that I've just created. And we can see all the logs for that. And we can go and see the files, which there's nothing on this file system at the moment. And we can have a look at the telemetry as well if we want to. Again, this is all kind of bootstrap for you, which is kind of nice. Like, pretty straightforward stuff, right? But it sort of gives you that low barrier to getting running with agents. All right, so looking at the clock, 1:15, I think what we'll do is we'll skip the second one. So the second one was just, actually, we'll do that one. I think that's really useful to see. So that was using the responses API. Now, this one's pretty cool. This is a .NET example, but it's using a different handler. This is called the invocations endpoint. So this lets you pass whatever the hell you want to your agent. We don't care. Like, it's up to you. You don't even have to have an agent in there if you don't want to. So in my case here, I'm just listening on the invocations handler, and I'm not even looking at what's coming in. I'm just going to write out, it's a pleasure to see you today. So there's no LLM. There's nothing going on. This is like raw at this point in time. We don't store conversations for you when you do this. You've got to do that yourself. But what it enables is for you really to bring like whatever agent harness you need to do what you want to do. So I'm going to move and skip that demo in the interest of time and go straight to this one, which I think is kind of cool, using the GitHub Copilot SDK. So if anyone's ever thought about building an agent, right, it's just a run loop, right, that calls tools. But some agent harnesses are probably more interesting and rich compared to others. You either start from scratch and build it yourself, or you can build on something like the GitHub Copilot SDK, which is the same thing that powers GitHub Copilot in VS Code. So you can bundle that into your own agent, and this is a little example of it, and we'll have a bit of fun with this in a second. And you can use the you can use the invocation handler to effectively have a conversation with the Copilot agent harness. So what can you do with that? Well, it's a bit of fun, right? I've got an agent that I deployed up into Foundry, which is called the diagnosis agent. It's one that I've written, and it was trying to understand like Foundry networking issues. So all these things can connect to your private networks, all nice and locked down and secure. But what happens if you can't reach something inside your network? Well, you kind of need to get in there, right? And if you want to start thinking about executing low-level commands, trace routes, stuff like that, you don't want to build all that from scratch. So why not just take a harness that gives you that for free? So this is basically running the GitHub Copilot CLI inside an agent. And let's just ask it an interesting question. Let's say, so we'll start off with a little diagnosis of the environment. Hopefully you can see this. And what's going on? Oh no, 401 permission failed. Let me just try that one more time because it's a good demo. I want to see if we can make that work. It's got to have some demo problem, right? So we'll start that off using an access token. And let's have a poke around the diagnosis in the environment. So hopefully this one comes back now. Again, this is creating a VM on the fly. It's now having a conversation with that. And we can start to have a poke around the environment. And because this is the GitHub Copilot harness, let's have a look at what's inside this file. What's in? So I've written nothing here, right? This is literally taking a harness off the shelf and running it. And just to give you an insight into the power you can get from doing that, it's writing Python code, it's executing shell scripts, it's looking into files, it's just kind of off on its little merry dance. And in this case, what have we found? We've basically been told, after calling a whole bunch of things, that it's found some certificates, and here they are, and da-da-da. So again, this is just like free, yeah? I didn't write a line of code to make that happen. GitHub Copilot SDK comes with tools. Tools are kind of what make your agents tick. So what I want to do is move on for the last 10 minutes from the hosted agent concept into tools. Because I think there's some other things that we've just dropped inside Foundry that are going to make it much leaner and easier to actually create agents where you have lots of tools. So who's seen tool bloat before in their agents? Show of hands in here. Who's got agents? I can see one hand. That's good. I'm not sure. My glasses, I can't really see people's eyes, so maybe everyone's sleeping out there. I don't know. That's okay. So tools are awesome, but they can also be a liability because agents have context windows, and what we see when MCP servers start to come along is context windows can really start to bloat because of tools. So in my case here, I've got some tools, and what I've also done is I built a little, I'm using this little tool called the MCP inspector. And I've pointed it just to have a look at what I've given access to my agents to. So this is a fairly lean use case, right? But it's a World Cup theme as well, if anyone's spotted that. There's a lot of tools in here. And I think when I counted it, it was about 30,000 tokens going into each agent just before it's even done anything. So I say, hey, agent, how are you going? 30,000 tokens with tools just to respond, I'm good, Graeme. It's like, that's a lot, right? That really starts to add up. So what can we do to help that? Well, there's a few things, right? So first thing we've done is we've introduced this concept of a toolbox. So previously when you write your agents, you've probably had to give them access to lots of different tools. And let's say you've got 5 or 6 agents, they all want to access the same kind of things. You're now wiring each of those tools into each agent, having to deal with authorization concerns, and it becomes quite messy. So the first thing that Toolbox will do is it will abstract that for you, and it will allow you to bundle tools into one, what we call Toolbox, and then you can just use that in your agent. So now you don't really need to understand about all of the different sources for those tools. So I'll click on this one, and you can see that I've given it access to my World Cup tools, to my Burnley Club shop tools. I had to get my home football team in there. It's World Cup time. Give me that, please. I've given it access to WebIQ, which you may have heard about a build. It's just a really fast search, Bing search under the hood, basically, that can get your agent up-to-date context really quickly. And I've given it access to WorkIQ. So it can now talk to teams. It can send Teams messages, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, right? There's lots of different authorization we'd have to do. We'd have to wire up on behalf of flows. We'd have to deal with OAuth secrets. We'd have to deal with API keys. And we don't want to be doing that for every agent. So this concept allows us to bundle that up and give it to an agent in one nice little package. And it's cool, but it's quite heavyweight though, right, still. Because if I go and find my agent over here, so I've got one that I've already deployed, which is using the toolbox. And let's just have a little example. Hey, how did the Socceroos do today? Now I'm hoping it's going to give me the token counts here. And I'm hoping it's going to use WebIQ to find out how they did. Does anyone know the result? You'll know? No. They drew 1-1 with Paraguay. 0-0 with Paraguay. They've made it into the next round. They played the most boring draw in the history of football. But that's okay. That's what they needed to do. Oh my word, look at that. I don't know what happened there. I don't have live match results. I'm like, well, it does have live match results, which is kind of frustrating. I think Mel said her agent didn't do what it was supposed to do earlier as well, right? It's the day for agents not doing what they're supposed to do. But interestingly, and it's probably been really good and not called any tools. Oh, it called one of my tools, but it didn't call the other tools. But this thing has been loaded with context, right? I think if we look up here, you'll see, there you go. I think that means it's used like 44,000 tokens basically to go and execute that. And most of that is just all of the MCP tool calls. And that's a bit nuts, right? For an agent that's not really done anything. So what we've built into this thing now, which is kind of cool. Anyone's used skills before? You've heard of skills in agents? So you're familiar with the concept of progressive disclosure and this idea that why tell an agent like in fine-grained details what it can do up front if we can just give it the headlines instead. And then the agent can choose what it needs to know more about. Okay? So a lot of people think that skills are the only way you can get that, but in reality, that's not a skill thing. That's just being clever with how you advertise whatever an agent can do to that agent. So what we've got in Toolbox now, which is kind of neat, is, and you see this is the MCP Jam Inspector where we saw all of the tools a minute ago. What we can do is go and find a toolbox, and let's do it from here, and let's put our agent on a bit of a diet. So we've got this little tool search preview down here. So I'm going to click that and just hit save on that. And then I want to make sure that the version is the right one, because this always trips me up. V7, set as default. And then let's go back to the MCP inspector, and I want to go and refresh the tools that are coming back from my toolbox. So let's see, we'll just click on that and click on that again. And hopefully this one works for me. Tools list, excellent. And then we'll go to the playground, and let's have a look what the tools are now. Right, okay, here we go. So we've gone from all of those tools, 55,000 tokens or whatever, to two tools, tool search and call tool. So what happens now is that your agent is pretty much instructed, hey, I've got some tools, but you don't need to know about them quite yet. I can give you a rough kind of summary of what those tools are about, but if there's something that you think you're going to need external context for, or that you think you need to kind of invoke in the real world, then you call me and I'll give you back a tool if I think it makes sense. So we go from all of that context down to just two really, really simple tools. And what that then looks like, and again, I'm not sure if we'll be able to do it justice given my agent is being a little bit naughty over here, but we'll try it anyway. And then let's just tell it, hey, how did the Socceroos go today? So let's see how we go on this one. Is it going to work or not? It's like, it was bad enough doing demos with like normal APIs 3 years ago. Now when you have to throw agents in there as well, it's just like, it all gets a bit crazy. It still doesn't think it has access to results. Oh my God. But interestingly, it's got, as a Burnley fan, I'd love to see a Socceroos high press and work with Turf more too. That's kind of awesome. Now, I don't know if, hopefully this looks better. So look at this, right? I want to say that's a result though, right? So we've gone from like potentially thousands and thousands of tokens to now 738 tokens instead. So you can really, really dramatically reduce what it costs to run your agents by using this thing. Like being serious, I know Jeff Holland did a talk on it, and I think he said like 90% cost reduction just because agents are so overloaded with tools at the moment. You know, you could engineer it and not provide them as many tools, but there are scenarios where you really can't avoid that. So I'd say definitely want to look at, because it kind of gives you all these nice isolation boundaries around credentials and things like that. This is cool because you can use it on any agent platform as well. So the toolbox itself just becomes an MCP server. So you can go and consume that from an agent running in ECA or app service or Kubernetes if you're that way inclined. Hopefully no one's that way inclined in here, maybe, I don't know. There's some sly laughs in there. All right, sweet. So I would think what I will do is pause there. Progressive disclosure, agents got what they wanted, blah, 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 grand finale. See if there's any questions on any of this. Any questions? Go on, Rob.
Have you seen situations where, because you didn't give it more full descriptions of what tools are
So the question is a really good one. Have you seen situations where because you didn't give it more than just as a tool search, that it didn't find the tools that it wanted? Is that the kind of gist of the question? Yeah, cool. Brilliant question. It's like you've read my thread with the product team at the moment. So behind the scenes, that's doing like a BM25 kind of text search of what the agent gives it, and then it searches it against the metadata on those tools. So things I've seen this break. If the agent or the LLM does not provide a rich description to the tool search, then things don't always go quite to plan. And I found using GPT 4.1, the descriptions were super succinct, like Graeme want football results. And it often wouldn't match a tool behind the scenes. Whereas using GPT 5.x, you'd get much more rich kind of, we're looking for results for football matches and fixtures, and the likelihood of matching a tool is much more. So I've asked the team behind the scenes, like, maybe some kind of small language model or something like that to try and match the descriptions a bit better to the tools. So I think the big kind of thing there is it depends at the moment. Better models get better results on it though, for sure. Yeah. Awesome.
I think.
Gia's got, look at that. Hey, Gia.
Hi. So, when we build an MCP server,
Mm-hmm.
and if we have more than 20 endpoints, like if the MCP server becomes too big, then it's starting to have this context parsing, like an agent would make a lot of mistakes in terms of like calling different things in MCP. Are there any tips or tricks or anything that you have seen in order to optimize that?
Yeah.
Now I can see like, oh, it should be the main focus and
Mm-hmm.
it should be small enough, but
Yep.
in reality, you might actually want to have more.
Yeah, right. So the question is around, lots of MCP servers, lots of endpoints. I'm really just looking for tips and tricks on how to optimize what goes to the agent, right? Look, and this is such a kind of like early science that everything's opinions in here, right? So when I see that kind of thing, I think of a few levels. The first is how focused is your agent, and can you just kind of strip out the tools that it needs, right? So if yes, then just create MCP servers or do tool filtering or something like that to really restrict what goes into that context window. I think if that's not possible, that's when you start to step into things like you're seeing here, right? So just some way of somehow making the progressive disclosure work. And I suspect, this is like all theory, that over the next few months, we'll start to see this tool search maybe become a bit more like a skill, in that there's no reason for me why we can't just put a headline for each MCP server into the initial context window, instead of just giving it, like, you search for tools and you invoke a tool. So I'd like to see that like start to come. But where we are today, I think this is like a really nice interim step for that. The Toolbox actually supports skills as well, which is kind of cool. I didn't show that. It's a preview that only dropped a week ago, because that's the other thing. Like, I'm sure like everyone in this room, it's crazy at the moment, right? You wake up. We used to think JavaScript frameworks evolved quickly like 8 years ago. This stuff's like every 2 hours you wake up and there's something new that's come that you've got to get your head around. So it is a bit nuts. But yeah, this Toolbox, they support skills now as well. So I think they do progressive disclosure of those into your agents. But thanks, Gio. Great question. Cheers. Awesome. Cool.
All right, if that's everything,
we're
then we
at
can thank Graeme
time.
for his session.
Thank you, everybody. Cheers. Thanks.